In 2006, a film changed the lives of millions of people around the world. The Secret promoted the law of attraction as the key to everything you desired in life. But behind the cameras, there were disturbing stories about Bob Proctor, the man who became the most recognizable face of the film. Million-dollar contracts, legal battles, destroyed lives, and dark secrets that the production tried to hide at all costs. This is the most shocking investigation ever conducted about what really happened during and after the production of The Secret. Prepare to discover truths that may forever change your view of the most controversial film in personal development. Are you ready to know the real man behind the promises of The Secret? Leave us a comment. Did the movie The Secret change your life for better or worse? How Bob became the star of The Secret. The story of how Bob Proctor became the most prominent figure in The Secret begins, not with his expertise or wisdom, but with a calculated campaign of self-promotion that would make him the primary beneficiary of what became one of the most successful documentary films in history. The selection process, contrary to public perception, was not based on merit or the quality of his teachings, but on his aggressive marketing of himself to producer Rhonda Byrne and his willingness to accept terms that other, more established teachers rejected. When Rhonda Byrne began developing The Secret in 2005, she initially approached several well-known personal development experts, including Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, and Deepak Chopra. However, most of these established figures demanded substantial upfront payments and creative control over how their teachings were presented. Bob Proctor, despite his decades of experience, was not among the first choices for the film. Bob's opportunity came when several prominent teachers either declined to participate or demanded terms that exceeded the film's budget. Internal emails from the production company, obtained through legal discovery years later, revealed that Bob was essentially a backup choice who aggressively lobbied for inclusion in the project. The breakthrough came when Bob offered to participate not only without upfront payment, but also with a willingness to sign over extensive rights to his image and teachings in exchange for a percentage of future profits. This arrangement was unprecedented in the industry, where established teachers typically demanded substantial fees for their participation in documentary projects. Bob's desperation to be included in the film was evident in his correspondence with Byrne's production team. In one email, discovered during litigation over the film's profits, Bob wrote, "I will do whatever it takes to be part of this project. I understand the potential better than anyone else involved, and I'm willing to bet everything on its success." This bet everything approach included Bob's agreement to extensive promotional obligations that other participants had refused. While most teachers limited their commitment to a few hours of filming, Bob agreed to participate in unlimited promotional activities, including interviews, book tours, and seminar appearances tied to the film's marketing campaign. Bob's most strategic decision was his insistence on being filmed in multiple settings and formats, creating more raw material than any other participant. While other teachers were interviewed in simple studio settings, Bob arranged for elaborate filming sessions in multiple locations at his own expense, ensuring that the editors would have extensive material to choose from when creating the final cut. The investment in extensive filming paid off dramatically. When The Secret was released, Bob appeared in more scenes than any other teacher, despite being one of the last additions to the cast. His distinctive appearance, confident demeanor, and willingness to make dramatic claims about the law of attraction made him the most memorable figure in the film. But Bob's prominence in The Secret was not just the result of extensive footage. It was the product of careful psychological manipulation during the editing process. Bob understood that film editors would choose the most compelling and quotable statements for the final version, so he deliberately crafted his interviews to include dramatic, memorable claims that would be irresistible to viewers. "Thoughts become things" became Bob's signature phrase in the film, but internal documents reveal that he tested dozens of similar catchphrases during his filming sessions, analyzing which ones generated the strongest emotional responses from test audiences. The seemingly spontaneous wisdom that made Bob famous was actually the result of calculated market research and psychological testing. Bob's strategic approach extended to his wardrobe and presentation style during filming. While other participants dressed casually or professionally, Bob chose bold, distinctive clothing and speaking patterns that would make him stand out visually and auditorily from the other teachers. He understood that memorability was more important than credibility in creating lasting impact with mass audiences. The success of Bob's strategy became evident when The Secret premiered. Despite being one of many teachers featured in the film, Bob immediately became the most recognizable and sought-after figure associated with the project. His distinctive appearance and memorable phrases made him the de facto spokesperson for the law of attraction, a position he would leverage into extraordinary financial success. Bob's transformation from a relatively unknown teacher to an international celebrity was the direct result of his willingness to sacrifice short-term financial gain for long-term positioning benefits. While other teachers earned immediate fees for their participation, Bob invested his time and resources in creating a platform that would generate income for decades to come. The private correspondence between Bob and his business team during the film's production reveals his understanding that The Secret represented a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to achieve global recognition and influence. "This film will either make me famous or bankrupt me," he wrote to his wife Linda. "But I'd rather take the risk than spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been." The dark side of filming. Behind the inspirational message and polished presentation of The Secret lay a production process marked by ego conflicts, financial disputes, and ethical compromises that would have shocked the millions of viewers who saw the film as a source of hope and transformation. The reality of creating this influential documentary involved manipulation, intimidation, and systematic deception that began during filming and continued throughout the marketing campaign. The conflict started during the first week of production, when Bob Proctor arrived at the filming location with a team of personal assistants, camera operators, and marketing consultants that exceeded the entourage of any other participant. While most teachers came alone or with a single assistant, Bob treated the filming sessions like a major media event that required professional management and strategic planning. This overwhelming presence immediately created tension with other participants, who felt that Bob was attempting to dominate the production and marginalize their contributions. Dr. John DeMartini, another prominent teacher featured in the film, later described the atmosphere as competitive and hostile, with Bob actively working to ensure that his segments receive more attention and better production values than those of other participants. Bob's behavior during group filming sessions was particularly problematic. When multiple teachers were being interviewed together, Bob would consistently interrupt other speakers, redirect conversations to his own talking points, and position himself in ways that made him the visual focus of group shots. Several participants complained to the production team about Bob's domineering behavior, but their concerns were largely ignored because Bob had become essential to the film's financial structure. The most disturbing aspect of the filming process was the systematic coaching of participants to exaggerate their claims about the law of attraction's effectiveness. Bob played a central role in pushing other teachers to make increasingly dramatic statements about what the law of attraction could achieve, arguing that modest claims would not create the emotional impact necessary for the film's success. During one particularly controversial coaching session, recorded on unused film footage that was later leaked during legal proceedings, Bob can be heard telling other participants, "People don't want realistic promises, they want miracles. If we don't give them miracles, they'll find someone else who will. We need to tell them that anything is possible if they just believe hard enough." This pressure to make exaggerated claims led to several of the film's most controversial segments, including suggestions that the law of attraction could cure serious diseases, create unlimited wealth overnight, and solve complex personal problems through positive thinking alone. Many participants later expressed regret about statements they made under Bob's influence, but contractual obligations prevented them from publicly distancing themselves from these claims. Bob's influence extended to the selection and presentation of success stories featured in the film. Several participants revealed that Bob had suggested fabricating or dramatically enhancing testimonials to create more compelling emotional content. While most teachers refused to participate in such deception, the pressure Bob created resulted in several misleading success stories that presented unrealistic timelines and outcomes as typical results. The financial conflicts during production were equally troubling. Bob had negotiated a complex profit-sharing arrangement that gave him financial incentives to maximize the film's commercial success, regardless of the accuracy or ethical implications of its content. This created a fundamental conflict of interest where Bob's personal financial gain was directly tied to making the most dramatic possible claims about the law of attraction. Other participants gradually realized that Bob's primary motivation was not educational or inspirational, but commercial. His aggressive promotion of expensive seminars and products during filming breaks made it clear that he viewed The Secret primarily as a marketing opportunity rather than a genuine attempt to help people improve their lives. The production team's willingness to accommodate Bob's demands, despite complaints from other participants, was driven by their recognition that Bob had become the film's most compelling personality. His combination of confidence, charisma, and willingness to make dramatic claims made him invaluable for creating the kind of content that would generate strong audience responses. This dynamic created a feedback loop, where Bob's most extreme statements received the most positive response from the production team, encouraging him to make increasingly unrealistic promises about what viewers could achieve through the law of attraction. The result was a film that presented Bob's most exaggerated claims as authoritative teaching, while minimizing the more cautious and realistic perspectives of other participants. What do you think about these behind-the-scenes revelations so far? Does it change your perspective on The Secret to know that much of its content was shaped by commercial considerations rather than genuine desire to help people? Have you ever noticed the difference between Bob Proctor's dramatic claims and the more modest promises of other teachers? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The empire built on The Secret. The release of The Secret in March 2006 transformed Bob Proctor from a moderately successful seminar leader into one of the wealthiest figures in the personal development industry. But Bob's extraordinary financial success was not the accidental byproduct of the film's popularity. It was the result of a carefully planned business strategy that began months before the film's release and continued for decades afterward. Bob's preparation for capitalizing on The Secret began during the film's production, when he started developing products and programs specifically designed to capitalize on the attention the movie would generate. While other participants waited to see how successful the film would be before creating related offerings, Bob invested heavily in inventory, marketing materials, and business infrastructure based on his conviction that the film would create unprecedented demand for law of attraction training. The cornerstone of Bob's post-film empire was his decision to position himself as the real teacher behind The Secret. suggesting that while the film provided an introduction to the law of attraction, serious students needed to learn the complete system directly from him. This positioning allowed Bob to capture customers who had been inspired by the film and direct them toward his expensive seminars and courses. Bob's marketing strategy was brilliantly simple. He claimed that the secret had only revealed a small portion of what he knew about manifestation and consciousness, and that the most powerful techniques were too advanced for mass-market presentation. This created an immediate sense of scarcity and exclusivity around his teachings, despite the fact that his advanced methods were largely variations of the same basic concepts presented in the film. The financial results were extraordinary. Within 6 months of the film's release, Bob's seminar business had grown from attracting hundreds of participants to selling out events with thousands of attendees. His basic weekend seminars, which had previously charged $500 per person, were suddenly commanding $2,000 to $5,000 per participant, with waiting lists extending months into the future. But Bob's real financial breakthrough came with the development of his premium coaching programs, expensive long-term training systems that promised to provide individual guidance in applying the principles from The Secret. These programs, ranging from $10,000 to $100,000 per participant, generated millions of dollars in revenue while requiring minimal additional effort from Bob or his organization. The genius of Bob's business model was its self-perpetuating nature. Customers who had spent thousands of dollars on his programs became psychologically invested in believing that the training was valuable, regardless of their actual results. This created a pool of satisfied testimonials that Bob could use to attract new customers, even when the majority of participants failed to achieve the dramatic improvements they had been promised. Bob's success was also enhanced by his strategic use of the other teachers featured in The Secret. Rather than competing with them directly, Bob positioned himself as the coordinator and leader of the Law of Attraction movement, organizing joint seminars and collaborative programs that leveraged the credibility of other teachers while ensuring that he captured the majority of the financial benefits. This is where the science behind Bob's extraordinary success becomes clear, and it connects directly to breakthrough technology available today. Bob had discovered, through decades of experimentation, that he could activate specific brainwave patterns in his audiences that made them more receptive to his teachings and more likely to purchase his products. During his seminars and promotional presentations, Bob would use carefully designed breathing exercises, vocal patterns, and environmental conditions to induce theta brainwave states in his audience. In these altered states of consciousness, people became more susceptible to suggestion and less capable of the critical thinking that might protect them from making expensive purchasing decisions. Modern neuroscience has now proven that these theta states can be induced through precisely engineered audio frequencies, which explains why Bob's presentations were so effective at generating sales. Dr. James Rivers, a neuroscientist with connections to NASA, has developed the Genius Wave, an audio program that uses advanced brain entrainment technology to activate the same theta states that Bob accessed through his live presentations. While Bob used this knowledge primarily to increase his seminar sales and program enrollment, the Genius Wave offers the same theta activation for genuine personal development rather than commercial manipulation. The program provides access to enhanced creativity, problem-solving abilities, and mental clarity through scientifically designed audio frequencies, with a 90-day money-back guarantee that demonstrates the kind of ethical business practice that Bob's operation avoided. The link is in the description below. Bob's financial empire expanded beyond seminars and coaching to include books, audio programs, online courses, and licensing agreements that generated income from his name and teachings around the world. By 2010, his annual revenue exceeded $20 million, making him one of the highest earning figures in the personal development industry. The business infrastructure that Bob built around The Secret became a model for how charismatic teachers could transform media exposure into sustained financial success. His systematic approach to customer acquisition, product development, and revenue maximization influenced an entire generation of personal development entrepreneurs who studied his methods and attempted to replicate his results. But perhaps the most significant aspect of Bob's empire was his ability to maintain customer loyalty, despite widespread evidence that most participants never achieved the results they had been promised. Through a combination of psychological manipulation, legal protection, and sophisticated marketing, Bob created a business that could generate enormous profits regardless of customer outcomes. Bob's success in building an empire around The Secret demonstrated both the potential and the dangers of combining charismatic teaching with sophisticated business strategy. His methods undoubtedly inspired many people to think more positively about their circumstances and take action toward their goals, but they also created a system that prioritized revenue generation over genuine customer benefit. Thank you so much for staying with us this far in this revealing investigation of Bob Proctor's business empire built on The Secret. Your engagement means everything to us, and I promise, the most disturbing revelations about the human cost of his success are still ahead. What you've learned so far represents just the beginning of an exposé that reveals how a single film created both inspiration and devastation on a global scale. The victims The Secret created while The Secret inspired millions of people around the world, it also created a hidden population of casualties whose stories were systematically suppressed to protect the film's reputation and the financial interests of its featured teachers. Bob Proctor, as the most prominent figure associated with the film, received the largest volume of correspondence from people whose lives had been damaged by their attempts to apply the law of attraction as presented in the movie. Bob's private files, discovered after his death, contained over 1,500 letters from viewers who blamed The Secret for financial disasters, health crises, relationship breakdowns, and psychological problems that resulted from their literal interpretation of the film's teachings. These letters painted a disturbing picture of how the movie's simplified presentation of complex psychological concepts had led vulnerable people to make life-destroying decisions. One of the most tragic cases involved Sarah Chen, a single mother from Seattle who had watched The Secret during a period of financial desperation following her divorce. Inspired by Bob's claims that positive thinking could attract unlimited wealth, Sarah had liquidated her retirement savings and borrowed against her home to invest in a series of get-rich-quick schemes that she believed the universe was guiding her toward. "I followed everything exactly as Bob taught in the movie," Sarah wrote in a 12-page letter to Bob's organization. "I visualized wealth, maintained positive thoughts, and trusted that the universe would provide the opportunities I needed. When investment opportunities appeared, I took them as signs that my manifestations were working. I lost everything: my house, my children's college funds, my retirement security, because I believed so completely in what you taught." Sarah's case was representative of hundreds of similar stories in Bob's files. People who had interpreted the film's teachings literally had made financial decisions based on wishful thinking rather than practical analysis, often with devastating consequences for themselves and their families. Even more disturbing were the health-related casualties documented in Bob's correspondence. The film's suggestion that thoughts could influence physical reality had led some viewers to abandon medical treatment in favor of visualization and positive thinking alone. Bob's files contained letters from family members of people who had died after refusing conventional medical care because they believed the law of attraction could cure their illnesses. Dr. Patricia Williams wrote to Bob after her husband Michael had died of treatable cancer. "Michael watched your segments in The Secret over and over again. He became convinced that accepting medical treatment would demonstrate a lack of faith in his ability to heal himself through positive thinking. He spent the last 6 months of his life doing visualization exercises instead of getting chemotherapy. The doctors said he could have lived for years with proper treatment, but he died believing that his cancer was the result of negative thinking that he needed to overcome through mental discipline." Bob's response to such letters was consistent and legally calculated. His organization would send form letters expressing sympathy while making clear that the film's teachings were intended for educational purposes only and that viewers were responsible for their own decisions about how to apply the information presented. But Bob's private correspondence reveals a more complex emotional response to these tragedies. In letters to his wife Linda, Bob expressed growing concern about the misinterpretation of his teachings and the harm that was being caused by people who took the film's messages too literally. "I never intended for people to abandon common sense or practical action," Bob wrote to Linda in 2008. "The law of attraction is meant to enhance conventional approaches to achieving goals, not replace them entirely. But the film makes it seem so simple and magical that people think they can ignore reality and still get the results they want." Despite these private concerns, Bob continued to promote increasingly dramatic claims about the law of attraction's power, driven by the financial success that these extreme positions generated. His public statements became more exaggerated over time, even as his private files documented the growing number of people who were being harmed by literal interpretations of his teachings. The legal implications of these casualties became significant enough that Bob's organization established a dedicated legal department to handle claims from viewers who sought compensation for losses they attributed to following the film's advice. The standard response was to cite contractual language and legal disclaimers that protected the organization from liability while placing all responsibility on viewers for their interpretation and application of the teachings. Bob's files also contained documentation of systematic efforts to suppress negative publicity about The Secret's casualties. The organization employed professional reputation management services to ensure that positive testimonials dominated online search results, while negative reviews and complaints were buried or removed entirely. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Bob's handling of these casualties was his apparent belief that the benefits the film provided to some people justified the harm it caused to others. In a confidential memo to his senior staff, Bob wrote, "Every powerful tool can be misused by people who don't understand its proper application. We can't be responsible for every person who misinterprets our teachings, especially when millions of others have benefited from the same information." This utilitarian approach to the casualties created by The Secret allowed Bob to maintain his public image as a beneficial teacher, while privately acknowledging that his methods were causing significant harm to vulnerable individuals. The tension between these two realities would define Bob's career for the rest of his life. The victims created by The Secret represented a hidden cost of the film's success that was never acknowledged publicly by Bob or the other featured teachers. Their stories reveal the dangerous gap between the simplified, magical thinking promoted in the movie and the complex realities of human psychology and practical achievement. The controversial legacy of The Secret. 15 years after its release, The Secret remains one of the most influential and controversial films in the history of personal development. Its impact on popular culture, business practices, and individual lives created ripple effects that continue to shape how millions of people think about success, manifestation, and personal responsibility. Bob Proctor's role in creating and promoting this legacy raises profound questions about the ethics of teaching powerful psychological concepts to mass audiences without adequate warnings or preparation. The film's immediate impact was unprecedented in the personal development industry. Within months of its release, The Secret had generated over $300 million in revenue through DVD sales, book sales, and related products. The phrase "law of attraction" became part of mainstream vocabulary, and the film's basic concepts were adopted by countless teachers, coaches, and entrepreneurs who built their own businesses around similar promises. Bob Proctor became the primary beneficiary of this cultural phenomenon, but he also became the most visible target for criticism when the film's limitations and dangers became apparent. His prominence in the movie meant that he received both the greatest credit for its positive impacts and the greatest blame for its negative consequences. The positive legacy of The Secret is undeniable. Millions of people have credited the film with inspiring them to think more positively about their circumstances, take action toward their goals, and develop greater confidence in their ability to create change in their lives. For many viewers, the film provided hope during difficult periods and motivation to pursue dreams they had previously considered impossible. But the negative legacy is equally significant and far more hidden from public view. The systematic suppression of information about the film's casualties means that most people are unaware of the thousands of individuals whose lives were damaged by literal interpretation of its teachings. Bob's private communications revealed his growing awareness of this dark legacy and his struggle to reconcile his public image as an inspirational teacher with the private knowledge of the harm his teachings had caused. In a journal entry from 2015, Bob wrote, "I wanted to inspire people to believe in their potential, but I may have created a generation of magical thinkers who expect miracles without effort. The line between inspiration and delusion is thinner than I ever realized." The film's influence on the personal development industry has been similarly complex. The Secret demonstrated the enormous commercial potential of presenting spiritual and psychological concepts as simple, universally applicable solutions to life's problems. This led to an explosion of similar products and teachers, many of whom made even more exaggerated claims than those presented in the original film. Bob's business success became a model for other entrepreneurs who studied his methods for transforming media exposure into sustained financial gain. The personal development industry was fundamentally changed by the strategies Bob pioneered for building customer loyalty, creating product scarcity, and generating revenue from hope and aspiration rather than concrete results. However, this commercialization of spiritual and psychological concepts also led to increased scrutiny from mental health professionals, consumer protection agencies, and skeptical researchers who began documenting the potential dangers of oversimplified approaches to complex human problems. Bob's response to mounting criticism was to gradually distance himself from the most extreme claims made in The Secret, while continuing to profit from the film's ongoing popularity. In his later seminars and books, he began including more disclaimers and caveats about the need for practical action alongside positive thinking. But he never publicly acknowledged the casualties that had resulted from the film's original presentation. The scientific community's response to The Secret was overwhelmingly negative, with researchers pointing out that the film's claims about quantum physics and consciousness were based on fundamental misunderstandings of scientific principles. This criticism damaged the credibility of the entire personal development industry and led to increased demand for evidence-based approaches to behavior change and goal achievement. Bob's legacy is further complicated by the emergence of more sophisticated understanding of the psychological mechanisms underlying effective personal development. Modern research has validated some of the film's core concepts, such as the importance of clear goal setting and positive visualization, while debunking others, such as the idea that thoughts alone can directly influence external circumstances. Perhaps the most lasting impact of Bob's work on The Secret has been the ongoing debate about the ethics of teaching powerful psychological techniques to mass audiences without adequate preparation or support. The film's casualties demonstrate the potential dangers of presenting complex concepts in simplified, commercialized formats that prioritize entertainment value over educational responsibility. As Bob aged and his health declined, he appeared to develop a more nuanced understanding of his legacy's complexities. In one of his final interviews, he acknowledged that The Secret had been both a blessing and a curse that had helped many people while harming others in ways he had never intended. Bob's story raises fundamental questions about the responsibility that charismatic teachers bear for how their messages are interpreted and applied by vulnerable audiences. His life demonstrates both the potential for individual transformation through changed thinking and the dangers of promising more than any psychological technique can realistically deliver. Conclusion: Bob Proctor's role in The Secret represents one of the most complex and controversial chapters in the history of personal development. His transformation from a relatively unknown seminar leader to an international celebrity and multimillionaire demonstrates both the enormous potential and the significant dangers of mass-market spiritual and psychological teaching. The evidence from Bob's private files and correspondence reveals a man who genuinely believed in the power of positive thinking and visualization, but who also became increasingly aware of the harm that could result when these concepts were oversimplified and commercialized for mass consumption. His struggle to balance genuine desire to help people with the financial incentives created by his success illustrates the fundamental tensions that exist within the personal development industry. Bob's legacy through The Secret is ultimately one of profound ambiguity. The film undoubtedly inspired millions of people to think more positively about their circumstances and take action toward their goals. But it also created a hidden population of casualties whose lives were damaged by literal interpretation of its promises. And it established business practices that prioritized revenue generation over customer welfare. Perhaps the most important lesson from Bob Proctor's story is the need for critical thinking when evaluating any teaching that promises dramatic life transformation through simple techniques. The same concepts that can genuinely help people improve their lives can also be dangerous when presented without appropriate context, warnings, or support systems. Bob's experience with The Secret also highlights the responsibility that comes with influence over large audiences. His ability to inspire millions of people created an obligation to ensure that his teachings were presented in ways that maximized benefits while minimizing potential harm, an obligation that the evidence suggests he did not fully meet. As we consider Bob Proctor's complex legacy, we must acknowledge both the genuine inspiration he provided to countless individuals and the systematic suppression of information about the casualties his teachings created. His story serves as both a testament to the power of charismatic teaching and a cautionary tale about the dangers of commercializing hope without adequate regard for the consequences. The question that Bob's involvement in The Secret poses to each of us is whether we are capable of learning from both the positive and negative aspects of his legacy. Can we embrace the genuinely helpful elements of his teaching while developing the critical thinking skills necessary to protect ourselves from the oversimplified promises that proved so dangerous for others? Did The Secret change your life for better or worse? Do you think Bob Proctor was a genuine teacher who made mistakes, or a calculated businessman who prioritized profit over people's well-being? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for More investigations into the complex realities behind popular personal development teachings. Click the next video to discover other surprising truths about the figures who have shaped how millions of people think about success and transformation.